What is going on YouTube? Gabs here and welcome to episode 21 of the Tech Pills weekly live stream. Alright, let's jump right to the first news of today. XFCE switches to GitLab. So, XFCE is another project in the very long list of projects that have decided to ditch their antiquated Git setups like cgit to switch to something more modern. So starting from May 1st, all XFC Git repositories previously hosted on git.xfce.org using cgit have been moved to a self-hosted version of GitLab. So not the main GitLab instance. As you know, GitLab is open source and self-hostable, and the XFC guys have made their own instance of GitLab, reachable at gitlab.xfce.org. So I think this change will allow for easier collaboration and contributions from all over the world, as well as bug reports, using a more familiar and manageable web interface offered by GitLab. In particular, I think that GitLab in particular is a great choice compared to other solutions like Git or something like that, mostly because, well, if you factor in how GitLab has recently become so popular in the recent year, mostly since GitHub got acquired by Microsoft, mostly, I'm certain that many people are actually already familiar with the GitLab interface, and I am certain that this switch to GitLab is going to speed up the growth of the XFCE project as a whole by making it easier for normal users to report issues, something that's always a big point of, well, it's a big critical point. Most users don't report bugs when they find them, so having an easier interface to report bugs is very convenient, as well as, more importantly, attracting more external contributors. And by that I mean, if you're a developer and you're used to something like GitLab or GitHub or any of these new fancy ways of interacting with Git, you may be scared and turned away by something like cgit. If you've ever seen cgit, I mean, if you haven't, check it out, because it's just it's aggressively unwieldy. That's how I describe it, and having a simpler interface surely helps a lot. And I think that we already have proof of how a better interface helps with improving the actual user experience, the actual amount of contributions, be them bug reports or code contributions from third parties with projects like GNOME or the Free Desktop project. Both have relatively recently switched to GitLab for their Git interface, and we've been seeing actually quite a lot of improvement. So good on the XFCE people. Definitely a much appreciated and much needed change in their workflow and in the workflow of every other contributor. So what do you guys think? Do you think this is a good move from the XFCE team to switch to GitLab? Do you think they could have chosen anything else? Of course, as always, let me know in the chat or in the comments down there. All right, let's move on to the next news. AMD releases a new entry-level, well, two new entry-level CPUs. So I'm talking about the AMD Ryzen 3 3300X and the Ryzen 3 3100. They are respectively $120 and $99 US MSRP. So these two CPUs are, well, on the surface they look very close, to the point that you may think that it's actually the same CPU. But they are actually quite different. So for starters, they're both 4 cores and 8 threads. So 4 cores with simultaneous multi-threading, and this means that you basically have something like 8 virtual cores in total. It's the shocking thing here is that for as low as $99, you're getting something that's basically like an old i7. The 3300X in particular is a little above the 7700K, the i7 7700K from Intel, in terms of gaming performance. So if that's any concern to you, it's on par or in some cases better than the 7700K. And we're talking again about a very cheap entry-level CPU here. So what's the difference between these two CPUs? So the biggest one is that like the higher end one, the 3300X, only has 1 core compute die or CCD compared to 2 in the lower end 3100 model. So what are CCDs? So they are the main component of the AMD chiplet design. If you've been following the hardware news recently, you know that AMD, since like the last generation of Ryzen CPUs, has switched to this chiplet design that allows them to have different little modules inside the actual CPU package. So they can like interchange them, and they can have like, they can make the chiplets, they can make these small CCDs, and depending on how many parts of the die of the chiplet are defective, they can bin it either for like a Ryzen 3 or a Ryzen 7, or even maybe an EPYC CPU or a Threadripper. And chiplets being the base of the design of AMD, they actually did something pretty smart here that enabled them to bin different chiplets, different CCDs, depending on how many parts are defective. So the 3300X has just one CCD that's 4 cores and 8 threads, all in one CCD. While the 3100X, the lower end model, has 2 CCDs with 2 cores and 4 threads each. To oversimplify this otherwise very complex technology, let's just say that having 4 cores in one single CCD helps with performance and latency. So it's basically gonna perform better with just one CCD. Now, I think that for a difference of $20, the 3300X looks like an overall better package for any kind of workload. And it's honestly a very nice and interesting CPU. And I'm telling you that because I have basically the same CPU from Intel. I have a Skylake 6700K CPU. That's 4 cores, 8 threads. That's quite old now. I think it's been released in 2016. It's still going strong. And I mean, if you're going to buy a new computer today, I think that if you are on a budget as far as CPU goes, you can just as well go with one of these 2 CPUs. I think, again, if you're building 1 or 2 or 3 computers just for yourself and, I don't know, family or friends, choosing the 3300X over the 3100 is a better choice, just because of raw performance and because the difference is, again, $20. I think that the 3100 is probably more suited towards system integrators or larger scale deployments, where those $20 can, of course, add up to make a significant difference. Again, the very interesting thing here is that AMD is now offering a CPU that's basically on par with the best mainstream desktop CPU of 2017 for less than half the initial launch price. And it's not even that cheap in 2020 anyway. The i7 7700K goes for about $300 on the used market right now, and that's not very convenient and not very competitive compared to what AMD is offering right now with these two new CPUs. So definitely a great choice for gaming. Of course, if you're just gonna go build a system for gaming, this CPU is I mean, it's gonna work well for probably many years at this point. You may need to opt for another CPU with more cores if you intend to run any parallel workload. So like if you want to do gaming and streaming at the same time on the same computer, you probably want something with, I don't know, 6 or 8 physical cores and consequentially 12 or 16 total threads. But I mean, for your average consumer, for any kind of typical desktop computer workload, the i3 3300X and the 3100 are gonna be just fine, and for the price you cannot really compete. And of course, they also offer a pretty nice upgrade path, because you can upgrade down the line to like any, if you have a compatible motherboard. I mean, the AMD motherboards all use the AM4 socket. You can upgrade to a Ryzen 5 or a Ryzen 7. I think you could not upgrade to a Ryzen 9 because that needs a different kind of motherboard with more and better power delivery. But definitely you have a pretty good upgrade path if you choose to build a system with one of these 2 CPUs. Anyway, what do you guys think? Do you like these new offerings from AMD? Do you think Intel still has an edge, well, anywhere in the CPU market? or I don't know, do you think these aren't just good CPUs at all? Just let me know in the comments or in the chat as always. Alright, let's move on to the next news. Lenovo is going to sell some of its laptops with Fedora Workstation Pre-Installed. Now that's pretty exciting. So Lenovo has recently announced that they will start selling some of its most popular laptops, namely the ThinkPad P1, P53, and X1 Gen 8 with Fedora Workstation pre-installed. Now that's pretty exciting news, and according to the announcements, these laptops will receive the same support they would have on Windows, meaning you can just call customer support if something just doesn't work or doesn't work as intended, which is very nice considering how much Lenovo computers are chosen for professional workloads, like in the office. Many work computers that are bought by companies are Lenovo ThinkPads, and having an option to buy one with Fedora pre-installed. I mean, Fedora isn't my favorite distribution, as Ubuntu isn't either, but having Linux pre-installed, any kind of Linux instead of Windows, is definitely better than Windows, in my opinion. And they also mentioned that they will ship with open source drivers only by default, with an easy way to install proprietary drivers if needed. This of course depends on the kind of hardware that's inside the laptop. If I don't really know these three particular laptops, but if it does have an NVIDIA GPU, I think that they're shipping with the Lenovo driver, and then you will have an option to install the proprietary NVIDIA driver. Of course, I have all reasons to believe that this will be supported by Lenovo. In particular, I wanted to talk about a little highlight from an interview with Jason Evangelo, a very active Linux user that happens to be writing for Forbes and is a part of the Destination Linux network with his podcast Linux for Everyone. So he interviewed Mark Pearson, which is who is the Lenovo's senior Linux software engineer, as well as Matthew Miller from the Fedora project. And in this interview, Mark Pearson in particular indicated that there are plans to write some custom Lenovo software for these laptops, similarly to what happens with most manufacturers on the version of Windows that they ship. So they will custom tailor the Fedora version that they ship to their laptops, which is very exciting. We Linux users typically don't get this kind of attention from mainstream brands. Maybe you have like some kind of specialty hardware or a particular feature in a certain laptop, and you need a piece of software to make use of that particular hardware feature. And on Linux, typically we don't ever see anything like that. And in the best case scenario, what happens is that the community someone in the community just goes ahead and writes a third-party software to control the hardware feature. But in this case, at least according to what Mark Pearson says, we're going to get actual software to custom tailor to the hardware. So that's very nice to hear. And another thing, in the same interview, the Fedora project manager, project leader Matthew Miller also stated that Lenovo has been very respectful of Fedora's only open source and community driven mentality, which leads me to believe that if they're gonna include anything in the default install, they're probably gonna release it as open source, which is just great. I mean, I'm thinking about something like fingerprint scanners on like these professional ThinkPad laptops, and many newer generation fingerprint scanners don't work at all on Linux. And if Lenovo actually writes some software to make them work, I'm assuming that if you have a laptop that uses the same fingerprint scanner, you can just use the Lenovo driver and it's gonna just work. Again, if they're going to do this the open source way, if they're going to release the source code for the software that they're writing, this will benefit the whole community, and that's just great to see such an involvement from a big company such as Lenovo. So this, of course, is great news for the whole Linux community. As I said, any improvement like to any software written for Linux, it's going to work on mostly on any Linux distribution and across different devices depending on the hardware. And this kind of support, this kind of interest from a big company such as Lenovo is very encouraging to the growth for the growth of the Linux community. And who knows, maybe at some point we'll just see Linux powered laptops showcased in big electronic stores. Who knows? I'd really like to see something like that. I still haven't, at least in Italy. Even Chromebook, I don't think I have ever even seen Chromebooks shown off in electronic stores. So I don't know how close or far that can be, but surely if companies like Lenovo, and let's not forget about Dell as well, that's been shipping Linux laptops for quite a while now, we'll see more interest from these big electronic stores to show these computers in their shops. So what do you guys think? Are you interested in buying any of these new ThinkPads? Of course, they're still not available for like to buy, but they'll be coming soon. Would you consider buying something like this, or would you prefer to buy from other brands like System76, Entroware, Star Labs that have always had Linux support first in mind? Or maybe you're just one of those people who buys Windows computers and wipes Windows off of them and installs Linux. Or maybe you dual boot. Let me know in the chat or in the comments. I'm very curious what you guys have to say about this. Alright, let's move to the next news of today. Inkscape 1.0 is finally released. So it's been in the works for 4 years and it's finally with us, Inkscape version 1.0. This is possibly the most long-awaited feature, the most long-awaited release of Inkscape, at least that I can remember. And one of the biggest features in this new version is the switch from GTK2 to GTK3. This mostly means support for HIDPI, so high definition, high density screens, and UI scaling, so that if you ever used a high DPI display, you know that there are some applications, particularly GTK2 applications like GIMP and Inkscape, that just they're just so small because, of course, the GTK2 toolkit doesn't support UI scaling, so the whole interface is just very small and practically unusable unless you know the software very well. You can just click the buttons because you know where they are, not because you can actually see what's going on the screen. But anyway, with this new version of Inkscape, we have a proper high DPI support and UI scaling, which is just great. And I think it's essential for graphic software. There's now also an option to change the UI theme with the dark mode option, as well as redesigned toolbars now featuring symbolic icons that certainly improve the look and feel of the application quite a lot. And let's just say it, colored, cartoonish icons don't fit well anywhere anymore in 2020. That's just my opinion, but that's what I think. I don't like colorful icons. I prefer symbolic icons. They're easier to read and easier to understand. Of course, there are also a number of other technical improvements and additions in Inkscape, including an extension for interactive mockups. That's something I will play around with. It's pretty interesting. Variable fonts, float text, which is okay, that doesn't sound like anything at all. What it means is that when you create a text box in Inkscape, you have the option to limit the right margin of the text, and so they always flows like to the new line. That's something that's I always wanted to have something like this in Inkscape, and the only way up until now was to create an actual text box with like upper as well lateral limits, and that wasn't always the best solution. We also have simplified line height settings for the text tool, which is cool. We have a new power pencil mode to create path with pressure dependent width. So if you're one of those people who draws and likes to draw in vector graphics, this is a much needed improvement. We also have new path effects, including offset, power clip, and power mask. We have an option to save a file as a template. Again, very useful, particularly if you're doing something like icon designs or website mockups, or I mean, even interface mockups. Having like a a template that's not just like an SVG, a random SVG file saved in your computer, is actually pretty cool. And we also have some initial migration to Python 3 for the extension system. As far as I understand, they have migrated all, if not most, of the built-in extensions for Inkscape to Python 3, and all that's remaining is for the third-party extensions to migrate to Python 3 as well. Now, I strongly suggest you to try this new version for yourself because it's full of interesting and useful features. And if you like to do graphics, and if you use Inkscape or other vector graphic software, I really suggest you try Inkscape version 1.0 because it's full of interesting features. I'm happy to see the Inkscape project moving forward with this awesome new release. And of course, since this has been such a low-hanging fruit, moving to GTK 3 mostly, now that they're done with this, I think that they can just focus on adding new features and improving functionality and adding on top of an already great software such as Inkscape. Alright guys, I think we can move to the last news of today. Not really a news item for itself, mostly kind of an announcement. I've actually revamped the techpills.technology website. So I don't write there a whole lot, to be honest, but I like to have like a web presence on the internet, an actual website for the channel. And I've taken the time to restructure it a little bit and change the theme and change the overall styling of it. So let me actually share the screen right now and show you, if I can manage to, how it looks like now. All right, there you go. This is the new and improved TechPills website. Let me zoom in a little bit. As you see, it's very dark. That's because the theme that I'm using, well, okay, let's go step by step. Of course, these are all of the articles that I already wrote since the beginning of the blog. And here you have the menu with all of the useful links you need about TechPills community, my lbry.tv link, YouTube, my development blog, GitLab, and GNOME GitLab, my two main instances of GitLab that I use. And the nice thing about this theme, okay, this is called Hugo Swift theme. And it was, well, not very different, but quite a bit different from what you see right now. If you're curious, you can just check it out. It's, again, Hugo Swift theme. And I've actually changed it quite a lot. And the theme is actually available on my GitLab. And let's actually go ahead and check it out. All right, so this is the theme. This is the modification that I've done to the theme. It's based on the, again, Hugo Swift theme by the GitHub user on Weru. And I made quite a lot of changes, mostly in the styling and the actual look and feel. And one of the nice things is that, let me pull up the inspector real quick, is that it supports both a light mode and a dark mode. And of course, since my preference in the browser is dark mode, I'm seeing dark mode by default, but I can just toggle it in the developer settings. So if you prefer to have the light theme, the website is light. And if you prefer, like a normal human being, to have a dark theme, then you just have the dark theme. And there's not that much to it, to be honest. It's a slick theme. It's easy to read and easy to navigate. At least I think it is. You have some related articles when you finish reading something, which is pretty cool. But to be honest, it's not all that fancy. It's just a very slick theme. It's simple and effective, in my opinion. If you have any suggestions on how to improve it, or something that you don't like, or something you would like to see different, just make sure to let me know in the chat or in the comments. I'm always looking for feedback and suggestions. And if you would want to see more written articles, again, just let me know. And with that, guys, I think this is going to wrap it up for today's episode. Thank you very much for watching. I really do appreciate it. If you like this video, please make sure to press the thumbs up button down there. Also remember to subscribe to my channel if you want more of this. Also remember to join the TechPills community at techpills.technology/community. And that's the new revamped community page. It's basically the same, but it's again the different thing. So again, guys, thanks for watching, and I'll be seeing you in the next one.